The players have been standing their ground, and the players have been right this whole time. In order for the WNBA to save this league right now, you have to open the books. Let me repeat, open the books. What's the big deal? Guess what? You open the books and
in the hyper-insulated, multi-billion-dollar world of professional sports ownership, there is a distinct, deeply humiliating moment when a labor workforce officially loses its grip on reality and crosses the line from strategic negotiation into pure, unadulterated public desperation, when a union exhausts all of its actual, tangible leverage, when its threats of a strike fail to terrify the billionaires across the table. The leadership inevitably devolves into demanding the mathematically and legally impossible. They begin screaming into the void, hoping that public sympathy will somehow magically override the ironclad laws of corporate capitalism. Right now, the WNBA veteran establishment is experiencing a complete, highly public psychological meltdown. Former superstars and current union loyalists are taking to social media to launch aggressive, emotionally volatile rants against the ownership groups, demanding transparency, demanding justice, and most absurdly, demanding access to the proprietary financial ledgers of the league. It is a spectacle of profound cognitive dissonance, showcasing a workforce that completely misunderstands its place in the economic hierarchy. Yet, beneath this embarrassing display of financial illiteracy lies a much darker, highly justified paranoia. The players might be demanding the impossible, but they are doing so because they know, with absolute certainty, that they are being systemically robbed by the greatest accounting tricks in modern history. Welcome to the breakdown. Let us expose the spectacular delusion of the open the books narrative, the ruthless Hollywood accounting hiding the Caitlin Clark millions, the brilliant psychological torture of the 6-week silence, and the terrifying hypocrisy of a union that demands transparency while actively lying to its own members. To truly understand the absolute absurdity of the current public relations strategy employed by the veteran players, you have to surgically dissect the specific, deeply flawed demand that is currently echoing across social media. Former WNBA legend Angel McCoughtry recently launched a passionate, highly aggressive defense of the players' union, anchoring her entire argument on a singular, completely delusional corporate premise. She firmly believes that the billionaire ownership groups are somehow morally and legally obligated to surrender their private financial spreadsheets to the labor force to prove their claims of unprofitability. Listen to the sheer, unvarnished arrogance of this specific demand, and exactly how it exposes a fundamental, catastrophic misunderstanding of how a privately owned enterprise actually operates.
The players have been standing their ground, and the players have been right this whole time. In order for the WNBA to save this league right now, you have to open the books. Let me repeat, open the books. What's the big deal? Guess what? You open the books and
in order for the WNBA to save this league right now, you have to open the books. Let that incredibly arrogant, legally baseless ultimatum echo in your mind for a moment. Open the books. This is the battle cry of an entity that mistakenly believes it is an equal equity partner in a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. The players' union operates under the deeply romanticized, fundamentally toxic delusion that because they physically bounce the basketball, they are entitled to audit the private financial ledgers of the billionaires who actually front the capital, absorb the risk, and own the physical real estate. In the ruthless, unyielding reality of the corporate world, a standard employee, no matter how talented or culturally relevant, does not possess the clearance to demand a forensic audit of their employer's bank accounts. Listen to the brilliant, completely unfiltered reality check that instantly destroys the logic of Angel McCoughtry's argument, bringing the WNBA superstars crashing violently back down to earth.
Open the books.
Because they don't have to. They don't have to. It's the same reason that the owner of Target don't open the books to the person working register number 6. The same reason that the owner of McDonald's isn't opening the books to the guy that's...
The owner of Target does not open the books to the person working the cash register. The owner of a fast food franchise does not hand their proprietary financial statements to the employee operating the drive-through window. It is the exact same fundamental principle in professional sports. The WNBA players are highly specialized, heavily compensated, independent contractors. They are not the board of directors. They are not private equity shareholders. The billionaire owners, individuals who amass their fortunes through ruthless mergers, acquisitions, and cutthroat capital management, are absolutely never going to hand their proprietary financial data over to a group of athletes simply to win a public relations argument. The owners offered a massive increase in base salaries and guaranteed housing concessions, They effectively told the union, "Take the money that is on the table, or go completely bankrupt. We do not need to prove our profitability to our employees." However, to completely dismiss the players' demands as pure, unadulterated ignorance is to miss the true, deeply cynical counter-angle of this entire corporate thriller. You must transition from cold, dismissive logic into the dark, highly manipulative realm of billionaire wealth management. The players are screaming to see the books, not simply out of entitlement, but out of a profound, highly justified terror of what financial analysts call Hollywood accounting. The WNBA veterans are not blind. They have lived through the greatest economic miracle in the history of women's sports over the last 12 months. They watched Caitlin Clark single-handedly shatter every single television viewership record on the network. They saw the arenas consistently sell out. They saw the league secure a historic, unprecedented $2.2 billion media rights contract. And, perhaps most terrifyingly, they watched the expansion franchise fees completely explode. Toronto and Portland are reportedly paying between $115 to $125 million simply for the right to enter the league. The players are looking at hundreds of millions of dollars in expansion fees, billions in television revenue, on a 400% spike in corporate sponsorships, yet the owners are standing at the negotiating table holding a measly $5.6 million salary cap and claiming that the league is still operating at a massive, catastrophic loss. The players know exactly how this deceptive game is played. They know that the owners are legally manipulating the operating expenses to artificially zero out the net profit. The owners can charge their own WNBA teams exorbitant, heavily inflated rent to play in the massive downtown arenas that they already own. They can inflate the administrative salaries of the front office executives, heavily depreciate their franchise assets for massive tax write-offs, and funnel the Caitlin Clark surplus into hidden corporate subsidiaries. When the owners say they are losing money, they are technically telling the legal truth on paper, but they are morally executing a massive, heavily guarded heist. The demand to open the books is a desperate, flailing attempt by the players to locate the missing millions that the corporate accountants successfully buried in the paperwork. And the absolute lightning rod of this financial paranoia centers entirely on the league's chief executive. The players are aggressively demanding that the WNBA publicly release the exact salary of Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. Why? Because the commissioner serves as the ultimate symbol of the ownership's hypocrisy. If the owners claim that the league cannot afford to raise the team salary cap beyond $5.6 million, but the financial books reveal that the commissioner is quietly taking home a personal salary of $4 or $5 million a year, a literal, uncontrollable riot will break out within the union membership. The players suspect that the executives in the suits are enriching themselves off the Caitlin Clark economy while actively telling the athletes in the jerseys to accept minimum wage increases and be grateful. But while the players scream into the media microphones about transparency, the billionaire owners are quietly executing a masterclass in psychological warfare. They do not need to argue on social media. They do not need to release statements defending their accounting practices. They simply weaponize the calendar. The absolute most brilliant, psychopathic tactic deployed by the ownership groups during this entire 16-month labor dispute was the decision to completely sever communication with the union in late December. Listen to the precise, devastating analysis of exactly why the owners intentionally ghosted the players' union for 6 entire weeks, and how this calculated silence was designed to completely fracture the locker rooms.
Off season to not respond. And I actually think they use the waiting game there as a part of gamesmanship to cause a rift between economic classes, because not every single player in the league can afford to miss the WNBA salary.
They use the waiting game as a part of gamesmanship to cause a rift between the economic classes. This is the absolute peak of asymmetrical corporate warfare. The owners are billionaires. They can comfortably sit in their luxury estates for the next decade without ever receiving another dime from the WNBA. But the WNBA locker room is a deeply divided, highly fragile economic ecosystem. You have the millionaire executive committee members like Breanna Stewart, who have massive Nike shoe deals and secondary league incomes. And then you have the overwhelming majority of the workforce, the role players, the bench rotation pieces, and the defensive specialists who rely entirely on their WNBA salaries to pay their monthly rent. When the owners received the union's proposal in December, they purposefully locked it in a drawer and walked away. They let the weeks drag on. January passed. Early February arrived. The silence was deafening. By completely starving the union of information, the owners intentionally turned the players' anxiety against their own leadership. The middle-class players began to panic. They looked at their dwindling bank accounts. They looked at the looming March 10th deadline, and they began to violently question why their millionaire executives were risking a permanent lockout. the owners successfully engineered a brutal class war within the union, entirely by refusing to answer the phone. And this internal civil war brings us to the ultimate, most sickening hypocrisy of the entire collective bargaining disaster. The WNBA Players Association is currently touring the national media circuit, aggressively crying foul, playing the victim, and demanding absolute financial transparency from the billionaire owners. Yet, behind the heavily guarded doors of their own union meetings, the executive committee is operating a shadow government built on deception, manipulation, and the active suppression of information from their own membership. Listen to the absolute most damning, undeniable proof that the players' union is actively lying to its own constituency, completely destroying their moral high ground in this negotiation.
Now, what about the lack of do y'all address the lack of transparency the agent said they're receiving from the actual players' union? Do you guys address that? See, there's been a lack of transparency from the WNBPA to the players that it's representing, and their representation is.
There has been a complete lack of transparency from the WNBPA to the very players it is representing and to their agents as well. This is the ultimate betrayal. The union leadership is demanding that the owners open their multi-billion-dollar books, while simultaneously refusing to show the actual, unedited collective bargaining proposals to their own sports agents. The union executives are heavily filtering the owners' offers, intentionally stripping away the positive concessions like guaranteed housing and base salary bumps, and presenting a highly distorted, overwhelmingly negative narrative to the locker rooms to artificially manufacture anger and force a strike. The sports agents, the men and women who actually understand the legal framework of these contracts, had to execute a hostile takeover and demand to sign non-disclosure agreements just to circumvent the union and see the real numbers. The WNBPA is utilizing the exact same dark, manipulative corporate tactics they accuse the billionaires of using. They are treating their own middle-class membership like highly expendable pawns, keeping them completely in the dark, feeding them propaganda, and demanding blind loyalty as they march the entire league directly off a financial cliff. The veteran players are crashing out because they finally realize the trap has closed. The Caitlin Clark economy, the greatest financial windfall in the history of the sport, is slipping entirely through their fingers. They overplayed a weak hand, they misunderstood the ruthless nature of Hollywood accounting, and they allowed their own union leadership to betray them from the inside. The billionaires are not going to open the books. They are simply going to wait for the March 10th deadline to strike, watch the union completely cannibalize itself, and secure the future of the league on their own uncompromising terms. What is your completely unvarnished, highly analytical take on this spectacular psychological collapse? Do you believe Angel McCoughtry is completely delusional for demanding that billionaire owners open their private financial books? Or is she fully justified because of the deceptive Hollywood accounting hiding the Caitlin Clark profits? Do you agree that the owner's 6-week silence was a brilliant, highly calculated strategy to fracture the union between the millionaires and the working-class players? Does the union's absolute refusal to be transparent with its own agents prove that the WNBPA leadership is the true villain in this labor war? Drop your completely unfiltered, brutal analysis in the comments section below. If you want the uncompromising truth about the real business, the real strategy, and the real cutthroat corporate politics of professional sports, hit that subscribe button, brutally smash the like button, and turn on the bell notification so you never miss a deep dive. We do not do mainstream media fluff on this channel. We expose the leverage, we investigate the shadow accounting, and we reveal the terrifying psychological warfare behind the press conferences. I will see you all in the next breakdown.